Well, how you going, boys? Welcome back.
Yay, back
Yeah,
again.
Yeah, where's all this energy come from? My goodness, you must have had a good lunch.
I've had a very good lunch today. Yes, enjoyed it immensely. But also getting into the swing of doing 1984, the singles today.
Hey, what a wonderful period.
Amazing year, actually.
Yeah.
Yep.
Billboard said that this was the year of the best singles in music history. I think it's a little bit overstated, but it's not bad.
Well, I was very surprised. If you'd asked me prior to looking into this, I would have said probably 73, 74 would have been the greatest years or the
Yeah.
greatest era. But looking at what was big in 84, I was really gobsmacked at how many iconic, truly iconic, long-lasting songs that still have a footprint today
Yeah.
were really big. Having said that, my tastes are a little bit off the charts, so we'll unpack that as we go.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And for me, it was a period where I was very active in commercial radio, and almost every one of the songs that we might say would be in our top fives has totally burned for me. And it's like I can't listen to songs like Thriller or Uptown Girl or any of the many of the songs from that period anymore because they're just dead to me. I just do I want to hear Hello by Lionel Richie ever again?
Good point.
No. But that's purely out of having played the songs,
Yeah,
24, 28 times a week for 16 weeks, 18 weeks, and just don't want to hear them again.
Hmm. So let's have a look at your 1984, where you guys were, because in 74, Wes and I were in Sydney, and
Almost,
Martin,
yep.
I
sorry,
was in Geelong. Yeah, I was in
in Geelong,
Geelong.
yeah.
Yeah, and I was in Taree.
So you're in New South Wales country town
Yeah.
in 84.
Yeah, I was working as a jock for 2RE. And look, Taree is a wonderful spot beside the Manning River. I tell you, it is so beautiful. And I lived about 100 meters from it, not far away from the sailing club, which had major events every Saturday night, and you wouldn't get to sleep until 2 o'clock.
Wow.
Yeah. But one of the great things about New South Wales is that it has a wonderful RSL, or had a wonderful RSL, where you'd go to see the major rock events. And I'd go and see things like the All Nighters, Midnight Oil, and so many other groups. Whereas if we now all live in Victoria, you wouldn't even think to do that at the local RSL. Maybe you get Normie Rowe there these days. I'm
Well,
not having a dig at Normie. I love
not
Normie.
at all. In
Never
fact,
met him. Never met him.
Yeah, he's wonderful. He's
I've
just great.
met. So Martin, you moved from Geelong to Melbourne by this time.
Yeah, that's right. I'd moved out of home and moved to Melbourne. I was working for a an art papers distributor. I hadn't really entered the music industry per se. I had been in a band for a couple of years, so I started my first band, and we were together for about 7 years. And so we were doing gigs around the place, and yeah, that was my story in '84. Just a young bloke making his first foray out into the big wider world.
Excellent. Well, that makes two of us living in Melbourne in 84. So I moved from Sydney to Melbourne in the middle of 79. So by 1984, I was well entrenched in the Melbourne culture and basically not listening to the radio, believe it or not. I was not listening to the radio. I was a bit burnt. First of all, in 79, while Wes and I were still in Sydney, I suspect you're still in Sydney in 79, Wes.
Yep.
Both of us are still in Sydney, and we still had Double J, which eventually became Triple
Triple
J.
J.
Okay, but by 1984, it hadn't become national yet. So it was Triple J, but still Sydney based.
Yeah.
So I didn't have the benefit of Triple J at this point, and I just thought I can't stand what's on the radio at the moment. This is going back from perhaps 1980 onwards. But 1984 was a watershed year for me, and I'll go into detail about that a bit later on. Okay, well, let's start with our top fives.
Okay.
Number five, Martin, I'll get you to start us off again.
Okay. So my number five is an Aussie group who'd had a minor hit with Short Note. Matt Finish, I'm talking about. Mancini Shuffled, they were known for as well. And they put out a single from their second album called Come On Over, which is very much like Short Note. It's kind of like Short Note Part 2. And I love it just as much, maybe even just a touch more than Short Note. 12-string guitar, just that incredible voice that Matt Moffat had, and bass, no drums on it at all. And it might even be live. There's just this intensity and this kind of bloom to it that kind of has this sort of live feel to it. Beautiful song. Not incredibly well known, but I love it. Matt Finish, Come On Over.
Wes, how about you? You're number five.
If you were a regular watching the TV show Prisoner, you'd be very familiar with the person or the actor called Jane Clifton. She played the role of Margot Gaffney and also worked in radio. Worked for 3CR in Melbourne, 3AK, Radio National, and 774 Melbourne. She also did a stint with Jojo Zapp and sang uncredited on the song Taxi Mary. She had a single of her own, and it's one of the very few that she recorded, which was called Girl on the Wall. It's significant because Jane was among the few 80s female artists to emerge. And it was the period of time where female Aussie acts really did remarkable things, and they were getting on the charts all over the place. I'm thinking about Joe Kennedy and Wendy Stapleton, and as opposed to Wendy Saggington, who was there in the 70s. And so my number five song is Girl on the Wall, because she was part of a movement that made things change. Jane Clifton.
Awesome. Thanks, mate. Okay, well, my number five is an overseas female artist who I'm not a great fan of overall, but I thought she kicked a bit of butt in 1984 when she did a cover of the Rolling Stones song Beasts of Burden, and that's Bette Midler. And that was kind of a shining light for me because I hated everything that was coming out at the time. We're watching a show like everybody in Australia was called Countdown, and they were huge by 1984. Everyone managed to sit in front of their TVs, and I was doing something similar. Given that I wasn't listening to the radio, I had to get my feel of what's happening. Yeah, my fix. But unfortunately, just about every song just didn't do it for me. I'll put it that way. And then Bette Midler's Beast of Burden comes on. I thought, gee, this is a great cover of that Stones song. I really like it. And yeah, I've just been enamored by that particular cover ever since. So my number five is Bette Midler with Beast of Burden.
Wow.
Yeah, interesting. All right, Martin, number four.
Number four is a semi-alternative kind of goth shoegaze act who covered a Tim Buckley song. And Tim Buckley, father of Jeff Buckley, of course. I was very shocked to discover that the first vinyl recorded of this particular song before Tim Buckley got to record it himself was from Pat Boone. And I'm talking about This Mortal Coil, which was basically Liz Fraser and Robin Guthrie from the Cocteau Twins, recording under somebody else's project, and Song to the Siren. Now, Pat's cover, it's worth a listen once, just to hear how somebody could sing a song and just completely miss all of the subtext, all of the emotion, all of the depth, all of the literacy, the literature, the depths of feeling, and just do it all completely by numbers. He just missed it. So fascinating for one listen only. And of course, Tim's version is classic. He did perform it with his 12-string guitar on the final episode of the Monkees TV show. But when This Mortal Coil put that out, and I probably saw it on Rock Arena on the ABC late at night one night. Don't think it bothered to charts, but moved me profoundly. It's been covered since by Sinead O'Connor, Robert Plant, Dead Can Dance, all kinds of people, but I don't think anybody sings it as well as Liz Fraser. Song to the Siren, This Mortal Coil.
Nice. That's excellent. Yeah, speaking of Pat Boone, Martin, I can just totally agree with what you've said with regard to his the way he delivers a cover, and his version of Tutti Frutti back in 1955.
Missing the point. When he sings about a girl named Sue who knows just what to do, he might as well mean helping him with his jigsaw puzzle. That goes there. There we go.
Yeah, it's just I just couldn't believe it when I saw the TV. He sang it on a TV show. I can't remember if it was Ed Sullivan or something, but
Yeah.
Talk about white bread version of a old classic. It's unbelievable. But yeah, I totally see where you're coming from in terms of that, and I will check it out on YouTube.
Can I say that Pat's a very nice bloke?
No doubt at all.
I met him in Sydney and spent some time with him, and he was just so congenial and friendly, and just so easy to get along with. There was not one hint of star, although that would have been faded quite a bit. He was just a normal bloke.
Yeah, good. Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
And what time period was that, Wes, that you caught up?
That would have been about 81.
81, okay.
Yep. Somewhere around about that.
Was he touring around, or what was he?
Yeah, he was touring. Yeah.
Cool. That's excellent. Wes, what about your number 4?
Well, remember, mate, that I've said I've gone for things which there's been no burn factor. So for me, so in other words, at least here I've gone for another Aussie track, and this is a song which is going to surprise you both. It's from the Electric Pandas and a group called Big Girls, and I just think that's just one of the catchiest tunes of that entire era. It was put together by Lynn Buckfield, and she was a founding member of this short-lived ensemble. It was the biggest tune of their career, and Molly Meldrum got behind it and really just praised it so much, and which is probably why it became a hit. The group made an EP, also made an album called Point Blank, and the album went to number 22, and the single Big Girls went to 18. Interestingly, after the group disbanded, Lynn won 5 Walkley Awards for journalism, including a gold Walkley, and she's been a producer of Four Corners and also Q&A.
Wow.
Oh, that's pretty good.
Life after music.
Yes. And I think that's part of the fascination for the Electric Pandas for me, is that obviously a highly intelligent woman, and just was able to put and speak about things in the songs, life's a gamble and all that sort of stuff, which women weren't addressing at that time.
Wow. I have to get into the pandas as well, I think. Wes, did you actually play that on your radio at the radio station you were at the time, or is that something you've discovered since?
No, we played it a lot on the radio, but because it was a mid-level hit, it never burned.
Yeah.
As opposed to the top hits. Still play it on 45 RPM.
Nice.
We've done that in the past couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And it's one of those songs that we call them a lifter. In other words, they're bright without being overly rocky. And so, in other words, can fit anywhere in the hour.
Nice. And just as a reminder to anybody who's interested, we continue to put a link on 45 RPM at the bottom of our comments there, or the description. And if anyone's interested, just go into the link and the show will come up. And do they still do the past episodes that you can select from?
With Pulse in Geelong does past episodes, and I think there's about 100 of them that are on there.
The link is now, the link goes straight to the Pulse.
Yeah.
And they can select from that. And
that's it. You can get the most recent show, or you can go back a couple of years.
Beautiful. Yep, that's great, Wes. My number 4, guys, is another female artist, and once again, one that I gleaned out of one of the bright shining lights from the Countdown show, is Pat Benatar, and a song called We Belong. Now, I remember when I first saw that, was watching the clip, and I was thinking, oh, interesting intro, synth, but done tastefully at the beginning. And then these Phil Spector type drums kick in, that boom, 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 boom. And I'm thinking, I'm sold already. You don't have to say just fantastic song. And that's another track that's stayed with me and I continue to enjoy to this day. It's just a well-constructed pop rock song, and thumbs up to Pat Benatar for that particular song. And I've enjoyed a number of her singles over the years, and that's got to be my favourite. We Belong, Pat Benatar.
She's still on the road nowadays, but billed as with her husband as Pat Benatar and Neil Giraldo, and Neil being her guitarist and musical director for all these years, and still absolutely as potent as they have ever been. Just if you want to jump on YouTube, watch some recent clips, just absolutely rocking. And she can sing like nobody's business.
Yeah.
And fantastic to see.
Brilliant. Yeah, absolutely. I'll check that out for sure. All right, back to Martin.
Number 3.
Yeah.
Oh,
A member of Aussie group Australian Crawl put out a solo album. And I'm talking about Guy McDonough. His brother Bill, I think, was the bass player.
Yeah.
I could be wrong. So before he put this solo album out, I didn't really recognise his face as a member of Australian Crawl's lineup, but subsequent watches, yeah, sure enough. Guy McDonough put out this really interesting single called My Place. Had James singing backing vocals on it, and a little bit of the ska influence with the offbeat, the upstrokes on the guitar and stuff like that. Just a really catchy tune. There you go.
And I'm going to look it out.
Another one we have to check out, Martin, for sure. Yeah, I haven't heard of that one. Okay, Wes, back to you.
And this is the third Aussie track that I've gone for.
Nice.
And it's from an Aussie group that started in Western Australia. And they got a hit right across the country with the song called Without You. And then started to get airplay with all sorts of songs, then got an international hit with this one, which is called Heaven Must Be There. And Bernie Lynch, the male part of the group, says the song is not intended as a religious song at all. And Heaven won the best single of 1984 at the Countdown Music Awards. And loved the song, and it's never burned on me, which surprises me because it's certainly got a lot of airplay.
They had some wonderful singles in that era. Absolutely was one of them, and I can't remember all of them off the top of my head, but certainly Heaven, Eurogliders, love them.
Yeah, just one of those songs that you can listen to all day, every day, without it really messing you up.
Wow. Fantastic. My number 3 is also an Australian song from an Australian band that I've loved since the late 70s. And after listening to them just break through with some punk classics and then mature as their albums went on, I'm talking about the Saints here. And in 1984, they released a song called Ghost Ships. And what a great song that is. That starts with an acoustic guitar and then just builds into this fantastic rock and roll song that just blasts at you and doesn't let up until the end. And I just love the Saints and I love their progression. But still, I still go back to the early stuff. Their third album, Prehistoric Sounds, is one of my all-time favorites. But loving what they did also in the 80s, which is a bit of a surprise to me, because a lot of 70s bands that morphed into the 80s went into that 80s sound, but not to my ears from the Saints. So that's my number 3, Ghost Ships by the Saints.
Wow.
Yeah.
Good choice.
There we go. All right, back to Martin for your number 2, mate.
Where would musicians and rock and roll bands be without their managers?
You talking about the Sex Pistols?
Oh, Malcolm McLaren?
Well, goodness, that was an easy one, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It's like, you got to imagine. So, to my mind, with the benefit of hindsight, the Sex Pistols were as prefab as the Monkees.
Yes.
It's like Malcolm McLaren was a man with a plan, and he had these kids who are coming to his clothing shop, and he's deciding that he can put a band together that is so obnoxious, he can develop a following. Record company tries to sign him, then he can agitate and annoy the record company so much that they have to pay out the contract and they don't have to even make a record. But it kind of backfired because the Sex Pistols did have to make records eventually, and they made one album and some killer songs, some amazing songs, and that was it. It was like herding cats. It wasn't even compatible personalities in a room. It was just like, put these people together, find a front man who could, the 1,000-yard stare, the glare that would intimidate anybody. But the problem was all of these people had personalities and their own ideas of what they wanted to do. So so Malcolm couldn't control them. So what does he do next? Makes his own records. And he pays the musicians and he pays the recording engineers and he pays the string arrangers. Yeah, I want something that's a bit like this and a bit like that, but throw in some hip hop or throw in, how do we take an opera aria and we put a dance beat to it, right? And make it a pop song and get it on the radio. So it's not that he was particularly talented musically, but he was very talented as an ideas man and funding things. And to me, he put out an incredible record that year that I had on 45, still have on 45, called Madam Butterfly.
Yes. Yeah.
And, he's talking at the start, he's doing a little bit of narration, and then the music comes in, and then the opera singer doing the soprano part, and just glorious. But yeah, mate, he could throw ideas into a blender and come up with something that tasted like nothing else. So well done, Malcolm.
Yeah, I loved his waltz, darling.
Yeah, I did. I
Which
did too.
which is just fascinating because he's got the piece, I think, with the popular song is in 4/4, and that's overlain with a track in 3/4.
Yeah, that's right.
And
So it's the Blue Danube
yep.
with house music, and he called it House of the Blue Danube. Hilarious, but captivating at the same time. And a
Yeah.
bit of Jeff Beck on skronky guitar as well. You can't go wrong with some Jeff Beck on it.
No, good choice. I love that. I completely forgotten about Malcolm McLaren. You'd expect me to have done that.
He was a bit of a rogue. He was a bit of a rogue, no doubt about it. But had a rogue with a sense of humor as well. And those kind of people, should you forgive them for their many transgressions? I don't know. That's not for me to say. But I did enjoy the tunes.
Mm.
All right, where's number 2?
Well, this is going to sound totally as boring after Malcolm McLaren, and but still a song that I still play today. I still sing today. I still enjoy today, and it's again by another Aussie act, Real Life, and it's "Catch Me, I'm Falling."
Oh, I love that song.
Yeah, the song followed the group's debut single, of course, which was called "Send Me an Angel," and it reached number 8 in the charts. And it's about living your dreams. And Richard and the Boys, what an incredible piece of music, released in December 83, and then just did so well throughout 84, and it just went wonderful for them. I'm still trying to figure out why they really only had 2 or 3 songs. Like they were signed with Curb Records in the US, and they put out at least 4 singles and just couldn't get American radio to play the stuff after "Send Me an Angel" and "Catch Me, I'm Falling." It wasn't as dancey enough, I guess.
They were extraordinary songs. They really were. And there was a remix that radio embraced as well of "Catch Me, I'm Falling," produced by Steve Hillage, late of UK hippie prog band Gong, and a bit of a guitar virtuoso. And he and his wife, Miquette Giraudet, embraced electronica and house music themselves. And, hybrids again, the prog rock and the hippie and the techno, and putting them together.
Remarkable. Real life.
Okay, well, my number 2 is a band that I don't know too much about, Australian band. They had one hit that I'm fully aware of, which is my number 2 in 1984, and that is the Dynamic Hypnotics. And
You're kidding.
Soul Kind of Feeling. Oh man, I just can't. I've just got to get up and start dancing when I hear this song. Oh, it's a great song. It's got that retro vibe about it, of course. That dancey soul music, and I just can't help myself. It's just such an uplifting, up-tempo dance song. Makes you happy. What more can you ask? And I don't know if they really kicked on after that. Do you guys know much about that?
Yeah, they kept going for several years in Sydney. Continental Robert and the boys. I think they're even still playing today. Wow. So yeah, they're around. I got to tell you a story. Loved Soul Kind of Feeling, and that was going to be one of my top 5 as well. But I thought I was a little bit personally involved in that, because what the guys did, in the 80s, we caught up and we had an interview, but they also recorded I've got that Where's Jay kind of feeling, which works over the top of I've got that soul kind of feeling. And I just go, well, I'm not going to be a wanker and do that. But the story is so glorious.
Yeah,
good.
just a great sound and timeless. That's the way I view that particular song. Absolutely timeless. And yeah, I'm always happy to listen to that.
Great. Yeah, love it.
Okay, well, before we go into our number ones yet again, we will throw out our songs that we consider to be worthy of talking about, even though they didn't make our top five, and we call them our honourables. So, Martin, you can start us off, mate.
Oh man, I have such a long list of honourables, some of which you've already mentioned, you guys. So, Swanee, Carrie Ann, just a gorgeous ballad, not his best known song by any stretch.
Oh.
And why it's never on the best of Swanee compilations, I have no idea. Beautiful song. QED with Jenny Morris and Rex Go, Everywhere I Go, great Aussie act. Art of Noise, Moments in Life.
Yes.
Nick Kershaw, Wouldn't It Be Good?
Yeah.
Incredible musician, masquerading as a pop star. John Waite, Missing You. One of those voices that you're like, why aren't I hearing this guy on the radio every day? It's of course he was in Bad English and the Babies, as well as doing solo stuff, but an astonishing voice. Prince, When Doves Cry. Billy Idol, Eyes Without a Face. LRB, We Too. Another gorgeous ballad, one of their lesser known songs. And I might just leave it there. Honourable mention to Cold Chisel and Flame Trees. A song that never gets old for me. Deeply sentimental. Yeah. They're tugging on the heartstrings every time. And extraordinary lyric writing from Don Walker and music from Steve Prestwich. Great stuff.
Nice. Excellent. Thanks, Martin. How about you, Wes? Got any honourables for us?
Yeah, and they're all burnt. In other words, they are great songs from that era, which unfortunately burned. In other words, I got sick of them. They included U2. U2 is one of my favorite bands, but U2 Pride in the Name of Love is up there along with Michael Jackson Thriller. Whenever I feeling a little bit morose, I put on Michael Jackson and some of his up-tempo tunes, and so he does it for me in that sense of just giving me some up-tempo stuff. When I do want to feel a bit morose, I go with George Michael and, for that careless whisper. But then I pick myself up again with Billy Joel's Uptown Girl and Relax from Frankie Goes to Hollywood. I say, yeah, Frankie Goes to Hollywood. Yeah, just love that.
All right. Well, I've got a few honourables as well. Because I've had a bias against that synth sound, I sort of lost a couple of really good songs over the years, but then I've come around to them. Two In Excess songs in that year, Burn For You and I Send a Message. Great pop songs. And it took me a while to really get my ears tuned to what they were doing and trying to ignore the synth sounds that were coming out of those. You mentioned was Martin, or was it Martin? Martin, you mentioned Flame Trees. I'm going for No Second Prize by Jimmy Barnes.
Yeah.
Great rock song. Also, Stone Age Romeos came out in that year by our friends, the Hoodoo Gurus. and they were uncompromising in their rock sound, you know, the guitar sound that I really love. I Want You Back was one of the singles that they released that year. And just a story which I will continue later on when I tell you what my number one is. In 1984, I started a new job in August with the Great Australian Public Service, and as part of that, my manager, he was into music, and I had him pegged as a guy who loved the 1950s stuff, you know, a bit of retro. And no, he was into the alternative scene, which I knew zero about. I didn't even know there was an alternative scene to be had, but he was right into it. Nick Cave, Birthday Party, and this band called the Smiths. And okay, so I thought I'm plunging in, I'm going in for it. And when I heard the Smiths, the first song I heard was Heaven Knows I'm Miserable Now. I went berserk, not in a positive way, in a negative way. I thought, who's this whiner trying to, you know, get me down? I don't want to get down. I want to hear soul kind of music, not Heaven Knows I'm Miserable Now. And fortunately, I've come round to this song, and I've put this in my honorables because I'm seeing it differently. I'm more mature in my listening habits these days, and I'm getting all sorts of moods into my ears. And this one's really grown on me. Heaven Knows I'm Miserable Now, as well as the other single that the Smiths had in '84 called This Charming Man. A band that I hated, now I like. So those two come into my honorables. And that's just about it for me, for my honorables. So let's get into our number ones, boys. Martin.
Okay, number one. First few songs I'd heard from this band were via the TV show Night Moves with Lee Simon that was on Friday nights on Channel 7. And he warned us before showing us the video clips, you know, so much energy, furious rhythm, but will you remember a melody afterwards? I'll let you be the judge. And sure enough, I didn't. And as they put more and more records out, suddenly you're starting to hear more detail. And they'd had an earlier single called The Cutter, and I think it was Shankar playing violin on it. And it's like, oh, hello, what's going on here? This is really intriguing. But my number one single from 1984 is Echo and the Bunnymen and The Killing Moon, where if they had been two-dimensional as they started, and then they're getting more depth and more sense of arrangement and where to put their instruments, this is going into the fourth dimension. It's just depth and feeling and panorama. Glorious, absolutely glorious song. The Killing Moon by Echo and the Bunnymen.
Good choice, Martin. Fantastic. All right, Wes, what's your number one?
Oh, you're probably sick of all this top 40 stuff. But I've gone with the number one song from In Excess. In fact, it's their only Australian number one song. And it came out in December 1983. It was their first Australian top 10 as well. Daryl Hall from Hall & Oates sings the chorus with Michael Hutchence. It's a pretty clever track which dreams of racial equality and a peaceful life, while at the same time possessing a really good dance groove. In 2018, Triple M's Ozfest 100 listed the song as one of the most Australian of all time. And can you guess what it is?
Original Sin. Original Sin.
Yeah. One of the interesting things, at least what I find about In Excess's music, that if you go to their compilation albums today, you won't find the radio singles or the single versions on the best of collections. It's the previous best of collection, which must have come out about 2004, 5, something like that. That has a radio or single version or the single edit of Original Sin. But like I've been looking for the 7-inch version of Burn for You. All the compilation albums of In Excess have got the album version on it, which has got basically about 20, 30 seconds before the song kicks in. And that's probably one of the reasons why you may have been turned off a little bit by In Excess, because of the album versions are only what's available today, even online. Whereas when we were growing up and listening to songs on the radio, we're only ever playing or hearing the 7-inch versions. That all changed as soon as we went to CD and digital, and no one ever bothered. They threw out the masters. I think that's what I suspect happened. Threw out the masters of the 7 inches, and that happened to a lot of Australian music.
Yeah, wow.
Wow. Amazing. Because you would have thought they would have had a compilation featuring a lot of the 7-inch mixes as well. But
occasionally they appear, like on the Kick anniversary albums and stuff like that. You'll find, the different version or the radio edit or an acoustic edit, or you'll find the bonus tracks. But as a standard fare, you don't get them. And like it's the same with people like Richard Clapton, and some of his songs are quite long. But what radio was playing was a much shorter version.
Yeah, right. Okay.
What about your number one song?
Well, my number one comes with a continuation of this story that I started with my honourables, with the Smiths. So in 1984, when I started working at with the Australian Public Service, we had a radio blaring in the background throughout the day. It wasn't actually blaring, but we could hear it pretty well. And the people who were dominating this radio put it on a station that I'd never heard of before, because I wasn't into community radio at all. I wasn't into any radio, given that I'd given commercial radio the flick, and I didn't have the Triple J of Sydney to amuse me. So they were playing a radio station called 3RRR. Wow, this sounds okay to my ears. I'm enjoying this. This is alternative music that isn't being played on Countdown, and my ears are discovering a new sound and some great music. So one of those songs that came up was a track by a group I'd never heard of, even though they'd probably been around 2 or 3 years by that time. A band called The Hunters and Collectors. And I think they were playing a demo version of this song called Throw Your Arms Around Me.
Oh, wow.
And I noticed that not long after, Mushroom, our friends at Mushroom, released the single in November of 1984. And I thought, this song is fantastic. I can't believe this. This is just like almost like the perfect pop song. It's really just had me drawn in right from the beginning. And it wasn't until 1986 when they re-recorded the song that it really took off. But at that time, it was just languishing. It wasn't even charting at all. But I thought, this is magnificent. I'm in on a little secret here with this 3RRR mob. And bang, this song has just stayed with me right through. And I think it's one of the best songs of all time.
You're alluding, or actually speaking about the alternative scene or the underground scene. And I remember I used to read Ram magazine and Juke magazine, the Aussie music mags, every week, and you'd have your top 25 or top 30 pop songs, and then you'd have your alternative as reported by all Go-Go Records and Archie and Jugheads and the underground record stores. So there was a whole kind of subculture happening. And at a certain point, that subculture became like hunters and collectors. They were subculture, they were alternative, but they did become part of the mainstream. And it wasn't actually a lot later than 1984. I think it was probably 87 or 88 that we were seeing hunters and collectors on the top 40 charts. And that was, Gadinsky, I think, set up a sub-label called White Records just for hunters and collectors so that he could sign them, he could mentor them, and he could help them make their way. And, a man with great foresight.
I got my hands recently on a box set of Hunters and Collectors CDs and DVDs, which is everything that they did in their career, which I can't remember how long that was. Maybe it was 16 years. And they put out about 13 albums, including some of the composite albums, which, pulled together 2 or 3 EPs and also their live stuff as well. Hunters and Collectors is just the peak. Some commercial radio stations, including one that I worked for, did play the original single, but it didn't play it very often. We had some jocks on the station who were very aware of what was happening in alternative music, and they would include it in their late night shows rather than being on the playlist. And one of those guys was Jared Shalaki, and Jared worked at 3HA, and he had a show called One Step Beyond, and taking off from the Madness tune. And while he had left from that station at that time, Jared later went on to work for Gadinsky and the people were premier artists, and is still there today. And so he was always a champion for the alternative. And you're quite right, both of you, that Gadinsky had this white label. He also had several other labels underneath Mushroom, and where they would try out acts before, which were not quite ready for the Mushroom imprint. And just Hunters and Collectors, just wonderful stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course they kicked on and became one of the biggest bands, Australian bands ever.
Yeah.
A magnificent song, and has appeared in a lot of Australia's top songs of all time charts, and as far as I'm concerned, well deserved.
Good stuff.
Yeah. All right, boys, that's it for the singles for 1984. Next time we get together, let's have a look at the 1984 albums. That might be a bit more of a challenge. I know it will be for me.
Yeah. It will be for me too, yeah.
Well, boys, until next time, we'll catch up and have a good break.
All right, bye-bye.
Thanks, Leah. Thanks, Wes.